All right. Welcome to All Things Division 3 Soccer with Simple Player number 3.
So this is going to be a humdinger. Hey, thanks for tuning in to All Things Division 3 Soccer with Simple Coach and Jackie. I need an introduction. I am Simple Coach. She does not need an introduction. That there is Jackie. She's trying to nestle in. It's kind of late here, and she's trying to, I think, get some Z's. Right, girl? All right, so, hey, I realize I'm sort of out of the scope of, and I'm very cognizant of that, working in the technology world, about being out of scope. And I realize that I'm a little bit out of scope here. This is now what's going to be my second special edition of Injured Time. I wasn't going to do anything more on the Women's World Cup, but I feel compelled. And so, considering that I sort of came up with this idea during the summer months in between interviews and stuff to comment on the broader soccer world, whatever that might be, whatever floats my boat. Well, I wouldn't say this is floating my boat, but it's got me almost livid. I mean, I'm like throwing up in my mouth type reaction to sort of what's going on with the World Cup, and in particular the women's national team. So for this special episode, special edition of Injured Time, I give you my top 4 plus 1 problems of the women's national team. Okay, so like I said, this is the top 4 problems of the women's national team plus another one that I do have to comment on just because it really bothers me. It sort of like offends a moral code, I guess, that I might have in the game. I guess. I don't know why it's got me in such a tizzy, but it does. But let's start with my first one, which is a theme that I've sort of been talking about, across Division 3. I mean, this hits home for me. Really does hit home. So I take a gander as to what that might be. If you've figured that out, this is possession stats in the first 3 games of the Women's World Cup for the U.S. So they first placed Vietnam. They then played the Netherlands, and then they wrapped up with if that's what you want to call it, with Portugal. And these are possession stats of the top-ranked team in the world. The team that was predicted, had great odds of winning the World Cup, and probably still does. Like, not going to take that away. This is soccer, so. But I mean, I'm flummoxed. I am surprised. I am very sour on this particular team, and I'm not sure they have what it takes to make it a go for the World Cup. But just to go back to this is the possession stats for the U.S. women's team against Vietnam, Netherlands, and Portugal. Against Vietnam, they dominated, almost 66% possession, and obviously they won 3-0, excuse me, right? Which, it's not a hard, fast rule, but you stand a better chance of winning when you have more possession of the ball, right? Like, it's just back of the envelope. Of course, talk to Spain, Japan, brilliant the way they played against Spain and managed to come out with a 4-0 win. So obviously, I'm not saying this is an absolute, but right. Then they go up against the Netherlands and play what I thought was probably only about 15 minutes of decent soccer, and they had 42% possession. And then where they were just atrocious. Let's be honest, right? Let's be honest about the soccer. And this isn't just a visual thing for me. Like I try to dive in and try to understand, like, why is something so bad? So, why do I think they were only good for 15 minutes in the Netherlands game? And then why do I think they were miserable against Portugal, where they only had 43, almost 44% possession against Portugal, that good team, right? Another one of the rising European powers in women's soccer that people seem to forget about how good other teams are doing and how little growth the U.S. team has been having, right? Like they outpossessed the United States, right? And I'll touch more on that. But I first wanted to talk about that one because, to me, again, it's a general tendency of mine. I watch a game, and I need a therapist. So if you know a good soccer therapist, please, by all means, reference them to me. But if it's gnaws at me, like, why were they bad? Why were they, like, I will dive in and try to figure out things as to why do I think they were bad? And is it legitimate? Because again, my whole channel, everything about the channel starts with the premise that I don't know everything, and that maybe there's things that I could still learn, and maybe my views about soccer might not be all correct. For example, my corner kick theory, right? Like, is that right? I don't know. It's a thought. I got some data. But, so I did do this dive. So this, to me, is a very glaring problem for until the new team raised the World Cup, the number one team in the world, right? You're going from, dominant possession, sorta, to, being out-possessed. That, to me, is a troubling trend. So that was number one. All right, so now we're going to go to my second of 4+1 problems with the women's national team. This one's not going to take as long as I don't think, because it's a point that I made if you watch the previous Injured Time special edition, where I talked about I tried to do some video and break down the game against the Netherlands. It basically is a copy of that problem that I saw in that game I've seen in against Portugal, and I did see against Vietnam. And good morning, Vietnam. Anyhow, so let's do number 2 here. Okay, so I'm not going to play video because my last experience, holy mackerel, the amount of times, I couldn't believe how many times I got rejected for trying to steal video for my YouTube empire, which, right. So, right, to me, when you, right, everyone, you can focus in on shots and stuff like that, and I will talk a little bit about that. But to me, the way you see a team play on the field from a distance, you can kind of see what they're doing and understand maybe the tactical. I'm going to say it's a tactic. Do I understand it? No. Unless it's hubris, right? Where you just think, like, this is going to work and we're going to do it every time. And because we can, because we're, Paul FC or we're whatever, then, the women's national team. You see that all the time. Like, yep, we're going to play this style and we're going to roll over people. And then it just doesn't happen, right? Because that's the way the soccer gods are. So, this one is, I just pulled the picture. I'm not doing video because this will be long. This will be a pain from an editing standpoint. Took this snapshot out of the Netherlands game that I did on that last Injured Time. And I talked about the runs and how the movement of the players are that I kept seeing. And I just noted, I said, could probably pull it up somewhere, and maybe I will. I just noted runs were really vertical. There was no opening of space. going east to west. It was all, you were running north and south, and where I just said, like, there's a lot of north to south running, right? Like, very predictable runs, and that there's no, especially in the defensive posture that the Netherlands was in this case, like, you have, I forget who it was. I think this ends up being a shot, right? But you have someone surrounded by three, but the ball surrounded by three. You have, just by the body motion, the way they're facing, drew some arrows. You got three players that are converging on that place where the ball is. And then you have your two wingers making runs almost identical, or two forwards making runs that are almost identical, right, in their direction, right? They're not trying to confuse, create holes, nothing. They're doing the same exact thing. And this, to me, is probably the biggest, one of the biggest concerns, right? It's because you need a little bit of a dynamic forward line, right? That's going to keep the defense honest. And I just never get this. I haven't gotten the sense of that, even against Vietnam, that they did that. I thought it was just, against Vietnam, it was just like the force of a tsunami against a hapless sunbather, right? Like, it just seems that way. And I have tons of examples of these. This is just one picture that I just figured I would touch upon. So that was number 2. So the first one was the possession numbers, which are atrocious and getting worse. Second are the sort of tactically where they're running. Hey, let's just bottle up the middle and force it down our throat. And I think that's Alex Morgan taking the shot from distance, which, if I'm a goalkeeper, I'd take that shot all day long from 35 yards out, 40 yards out, right? Like, go ahead, hit it. That's more like 25, like 30 yards out, right? Go ahead and hit it. Be that good. If you score, good on you. If not, but more than likely you won't. And I will say, the worst part of watching this is that this is the team I thought I was watching, like, this is who I thought I was watching. Like, I thought that was the game I was watching against the Netherlands and then against Portugal, right? Like, hey, let's just, we're all, let's go see the nice butterfly, and everybody can, get around the ball, but whatever. All right, that was number 2. Okay, the next are some stats that I have nothing to do with them. So I go on anti-social media and look for things, and I found, and I'll show them somewhere here on the screen. Paul Carr throws out data, tons of data on just what the games are, what are reflecting, and then another one, Yash. I can't pronounce the handle, but I'll put them in, and they do. I mean, the next two, number 3 and number 4 are basically their work, right? I think their work, or just sort of how they pulled it together. But so for me, again, first talked about, this is the aspects of the game. First talked about possession. The second thing was just the runs, right? That I see are very simplistic. I don't know what the right word is, and now 3, here are some additional stats that should have any person who loves soccer and loves the U.S. be like, what the heck is going on, right? So, here's a nice little chart I put together based on numbers. The easiest one, I thought. This is probably the easiest one, right? And it's so obvious. These are shots. Against Vietnam, we took 28 shots. We had possession for 65% of the game, took 28 shots. The Netherlands, we had less than half. We took 18 shots. Against Portugal, we had less than half, and we took 8 shots. And we're going in the wrong direction, right? Like, that should be cause for concern. I can see against Vietnam going down to, okay, what's the baseline? What should the baseline be? Okay, let's make it the Netherlands. Let's say 15 to 18 shots should be normal. I don't know what the stats are. But now you go down to 8, half of that? Like, I mean, really, that says something about about the offense, right? And there's more. Like again, the fourth one is going to be shocking. I think to me, it shocked me when I saw it. But anyhow, let's focus in this one on number 3. So these are shots. That's one stat, okay, and that's a bad trend line. That dotted line's a trend line. This one, probably equally shocking, if not worse, but sort of goes to part and parcel of what the part of the problem with shots. These are corners. For all the attack we had against Vietnam, we had 10 quarters. Netherlands 11. Maybe that's the baseline. But then against Portugal, we dropped down to 6 corners. Again, we wondering. Maybe we should be thinking, oh, we play like we play like the way we do, and with the stats we get are like we play against Portugal. So against the Netherlands and Vietnam, we were really good, but against Portugal, but again, my eyes don't tell me that story. And then the last thing, because I heard a bunch of the, the bubblegum posse commentators that get mad when you sort of say, oh, the women's national team played bad, and then suddenly you hate the women's national team, or you whatever, right? They commented on, guess what? Fouls. The number of fouls that were committed against the U.S., especially against Netherlands, and how terrible it was for the U.S. To have to play under those conditions. And I just said, okay, let me look at the number of fouls, right? And right, the blue represents the fouls that the U.S. got called in their favor, so they were fouled. And then the orange are against. So we committed 13 fouls each of those 3 games. And against Vietnam, we were fouled 13 times. Against the Netherlands, 15 times. And against Portugal, 12 times. So you would have thought, right, like just initially, and I think some of especially against the Netherlands, right, talking about the tough tackles and this and that and the other. Help me understand that. It doesn't look like that. So between everything's going in the wrong direction in my estimation, right? And where we think we could have an argument in fouls, there's not an issue, right? Because the game is being played equally on both sides, right? Between shots and corners, those are good indicators of looks to goal, right? Like, I don't know. And I'm not even breaking down this further. It's even worse if I said, hey, shots versus shots on goal. I think if I go back, I'm rambling because now all this stuff is coming forward. But if I look back on this, I think, like, except for Vietnam, I think maybe Vietnam we had like 11 shots on frame. Against the Netherlands, I think we had 4. And I think against Portugal, we had 1. So, it would be one thing if we were arguing, oh, we're going from quantity like we did against Vietnam, and now we're going with quality. But we're not even doing that, right? Because our shots are going down, and our looks to, between the pipes is gone down. Like, between this and the possession, I'd be freaked out. If I'm on the coaching staff, I'm wondering, like, we have a real problem because against Sweden, and I think that's who we're facing, right? We're going to have to score goals. We have to score 2 goals against a very, very good Swedish team. Because I don't think we win with 1. Maybe we win. It goes 1-1 tie. Goes to PKs, and we muster that through. But I would be surprised if it's a 1-0 win on our side. Although I do think there's a psychological element about Sweden that I don't think they like playing us. But I'm not even going to go there. All right. So, possession, runs, and then number 3 was shots, corners, and then the fouls, right? All right, so here we are with number 4 of the 4 problems. I don't know if they're individual problems. Maybe they should be like 6 problems. Or anyhow, basically things of the game that the game of the women's national team is screaming out to me, and I will just say, give me facts, evidence as to why I think the national team, I'll just say, is playing very poorly. And I am seeing it, but I am also finding proof in that game. Right? So again, I keep going back. The first one was just possession stats and how we've lost our possession edge over the last 3 games. Right? The second was the runs, runs on attack. So, running into space and that sort of thing. And instead what we see is players all running into the middle, right? And the third were the shots, corners, and fouls, right? Another aspect of the game, right? And I'll just say, to counteract that, like if they were playing brilliantly, things would look a lot different. I think the numbers would look a lot different, right? And I think it would cause, again, like if they were playing like Japan did against Spain, I would look at possession numbers and be like, that's interesting. They didn't have as, Spain had 70% possession, Japan had 20, but they scored 4 goals. How is that? Then it becomes a tactical masterclass, right? That is not happening with the women's national team. So this one, number 4, again, this comes from, this thing is awesome because it says so much to me. Again, falls part and parcel into what I love about the game, right? My first video was on passing and the importance of passing, and I did counting passes, right? Like who what teams could connect the most times before they lost the ball, before it became a challenged ball or what have you, or it ended up went out of bounds or something, right? And I just sort of correlated that with performance, right? Like how good are these teams? And there's a correlation, right? So again, anti-social media thief that I am, this gentleman, Paul Carr, and this other person, Yash, post their handles there, do these game reviews. And this is what came out that I was like, I totally have to thieve this. And they call it the pass networks. They basically looked at 60 minutes of the Portuguese side and then the first 60 minutes of the U.S. And what's the idea is you count passes that players make and to whom, and it gets weighted, and so you have these, okay, who has the ball most? Well, if they get the ball the most, well, their little bubble becomes bigger, and it's pretty telling. And then it just sort of shows you, hey, how connected is the team, or how disjointed is the team, or where are they attacking? Where's their possession? This is, again, the third game where, right, the U.S. against Portugal had 44% possession, where they only had 8 shots and 6 corners, right? And now this is the passing heat map. And so if you look at Portugal, right, everyone's getting touches. There's a purpose and an interconnectedness to players. Everyone is participating. The player with the least participation, I'm sorry, I should know names, but I don't, is number 16. Maybe that was a sub. I don't know. But I don't know the context for that. But you could see, right, they're coming down, they're working the ball from the right, to the left to shift over to the right, right? That's what this tells me in a nutshell. The keeper gets the ball, plays it out wide left, goes out further out wide left, and then it starts to get played into the middle or vice versa, right? Now look at the U.S. on the right. I mean, they don't, first of all, my first observation is, oh my gosh, they don't pass the ball. Right? There's no passing going on. Right? The other one, I'm like, conceivably our best player, our best attacking player, Alex Morgan, number 13, barely gets the ball. If at all. Right? Or it doesn't register. Right? And if you look at that, was it Lindsey Horan and Ertz, and I forget who's 19 is, but that triangle, I mean, that's the most, looks like the most deliberate setup that we have from a possession perspective. South of midfield, and then no one is connecting up top. Again, I'm on the coaching staff, and if I saw that, I yeah. I mean, again, are my eyes being betrayed by the data that is coming up on this screen? So that was number 4. Again, Paul Carr and Yash, I think. I don't know what the handle is, but they're up here. Check them out because the data that comes from those two is fantastic. And Yash, again, handle, whoever that person is, does game summaries, day summaries of what's going on. And not only of the U.S., I mean, some great pass networks, what they're calling, is just, I mean, outstanding. Okay. Not to beat a dead horse, but this was even scarier or more bothersome than the pass networks that we saw, right? Which just gives you a pictograph, that's a good word, of the passing pattern of a particular team. In this case, the U.S. and then Portugal, and how troubling, just from a visual standpoint, what the U.S. was doing with the ball or not doing with the ball in that time. And they're, again, right? This one, to me, is even more troubling. And hopefully it'll be kind of obvious. Let's see. Okay, so trend line is in the orange, red. The data points are all in the blue. Okay, so remember I mentioned earlier about my first video on this channel where I took a look at Division III teams, their passing, did sort of a passing analysis, and I came up with numbers where I said, okay, a team makes X number of passes before a ball gets, it becomes a 50-50 ball or goes out of bounds or something happens, it becomes contested when it's not clear possession, right? And looked at that correlation. Hey, the more you own the ball, the much better your team was at controlling games and then ultimately winning. I didn't think it was rocket science, but So this just so happens to be that same thing, but for the women's national team, going back 11 games. Which, again, I just sort of look at trajectories, right? It would be one thing if, coming up to the World Cup, the U.S. had these tremendous games, dominating performances, and then they start the World Cup and it sputters. We see that all the time. Not all the time, but quite a lot, where it's just not going as well. For whatever reason, they need to work through it. Maybe they just need to get through the group stage. So, in a game, and I don't know what these games are except for the last three, right? The 2.5, the two, on the bottom right. So game number 9, number 10, number 11 correspond to Vietnam, the Netherlands, and Portugal. And those are the number of passes that happen before, again, it goes out of bounds or something, it becomes contested, or it's a bad pass or something for the team, for the women's national team. And so whatever is going on, whatever the problem seems to be, whatever the poor performance, goes back 11 games. And that actually leads me to wonder, I should have done this earlier. Now, the 2023 statistics, I'm just looking at this, right? Their record, this is as of July 27th, so that includes the Portugal game, I believe, are 9-0-1. No, it does not include the Portugal game because they would be 9-0-2. Right? So all of these games here, so games 1 through 8 are victories. I look at that, and that to me is as problematic as everything else, where the direction is, it's like terrible, right? You're telling me you made, 11 games ago, you made twice as many passes in a period of time as you did against Portugal at the World Cup. And again, I've been saying all these teams have gotten so much better, but shouldn't the U.S.? But instead, here's a trajectory that just tells a pretty awful, paints an awful picture for me, knowing everything else. Okay, and now for the plus one. All right, so those were the 4 problems that I'm seeing that just I can't get out of my head, right? Like, the first being the possession, which is going in the wrong direction. The second is just runs and how they're actually tactically setting up to score goals, which they're not. Right? They're not. I mean, they've had 4 goals, but 3 of those were against Vietnam, where they've had a moderately successful possession and shots and those things, those metrics to me that I look at and I think, oh, okay, that's good, right? And even against Vietnam, they had 2.5 passes more than against the Netherlands and Portugal, right? So all those things are showing well. The third are obviously the shots, corners, and then the fouls, right? They're just in game. The passing, the passing network, and the passing numbers before it goes sour. So those are the 4 real soccer tactical areas, and now this is the plus one, because this is what started it all. All right, so I'm going to try to wrap this up in a little bit of a bow. And again, I sort of mentioned why I decided to do this video. Again, but I couldn't help it. And this is what drove me to that, because I mean, it really did. It really did. So this is I'll just say the non-soccer part. It's not about passes, not about it's about whoever this person is, right? Whoever that person is, who after the game against Portugal, right? They officially qualified by tying Portugal in an atrocious, embarrassing game for a U.S. fan or even a U.S. soccer player. If you kick the ball around and that would be embarrassing to me as a player. So this person, some announcer who's doing the games says the following after that game, right? There's now celebrating after. I'm sure everyone's seen it, so I'm not going to go into detail. I've never witnessed something like that. There's a difference between being respectful of the fans and saying hello to your family, but to be dancing and smiling. I mean, the player of the match was that post. You're lucky to be not going home right now. Obviously, I know who that is. Who said that? That's Carly Lloyd, right? And of course, the bubblegum chewing paparazzi out there that, you only cover the neat, fun storylines about the women's national team, got in a gander about these comments, right? Because she's looking at a team celebrating something that she knows herself, right, was based on sketchy performances and expects more. And I joked about who is this person because I think if it were, heck, I like him. I think he's actually a really good commentator. So Alexi Lalas, right? If Alexi Lalas had said the same thing and gotten some blowback, I think I'd understand, right? Okay, I can buy that. Whatever. I disagree, but whatever. I think people should have opinions, and that's it, and be able to defend them. The worst thing about Carly Lloyd, she says this, she gets blowback, and then she, depends who you talk to, walks it back, blah, 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 blah. Right? But the bubblegum paparazzi out there that comes around and every major tournament that the women's national team plays in, and then, talks about how glorious they are and how wonderful they are and the role model, all that stuff that is not soccer related. They come out of the woodwork, and then they go after Carly Lloyd. Carly Lloyd, who let me just again, who is this person, right? You're not talking about Paul, the YouTube influencer. That's a joke, by the way. You're not talking about me making some comments about a game. You're talking about Carly Lloyd, arguably the third greatest player, that is U.S. player that has ever played the game. You could argue she's the third greatest player behind, those other unnamed people or unknown people, Mia Hamm, and Michelle Akers. The third best player we've ever produced makes a comment that is 100% accurate about the performance of this team. That post was the man of the match. We are lucky not to be going home. And she was making an observation as a competitor. I was as a soccer player, you name it. And I joke about, well, who is this person? Who is this person who makes these comments, right? Let me remind you, because I was surprised. Let me remind you of who Carly Lloyd is. She was a Herman. This is in college. Herman Trophy finalist. Big East Midfielder of the Year. She was Big East Rookie of the Year. She was she was on the Soccer America All Freshman team. She's a 4-time first team All Big East player. That's her collegiate career, which is outstanding. You don't see many players like that. And then wait, let's talk about professionally. Who is this player? Who is Carly Lloyd to be able to say to say the things she did about lucky not to be going home, or Post being player of the game? She's a 4-time Olympian, 2-time FIFA Player of the Year. She's a 2-time gold medalist, and she's a 2-time World Cup champ. I think what really got me is that the next whatever it was, she sort of walked those comments back. And she's not wrong. Right? Whatever the reasons, I don't know. Can't coach, whatever. Everyone has opinions about different things. But the truth of the matter is that we have a women's national team playing in the World Cup that has gone from playing moderately mediocre to poor. Right? And is now, this is where the rubber hits the road, right? And now somebody with the pedigree that Carly Lloyd has can't talk about that type of performance when the numbers, again, in my book, the numbers don't lie. Anyhow. Thanks for tuning in. I'm angry now. And Jackie's asleep. Peace out. Did I say that again? I got to stop with that. That's annoying. All right, have a great evening.